Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
This episode contains some graphic testimony and descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Claudia Drury's story shows just to what extreme depths Larry Ray's control could be.
Away at Sarah Lawrence College, sophomore Claudia Drury couldn't sleep. She had insomnia. She missed her parents. She felt anchorless. She didn't feel like she was ready to be on her own. Heck, she hadn't even done her own laundry before, she later admitted. She also didn't feel good in her own skin. She felt awkward around men, and later said she doubted anyone would ever find her pretty. She was insecure about making friends. She found herself embellishing stories to make people laugh and like her. And then Claudia met someone who she said listened to her. He was someone older who helped her navigate all these anxieties and doubts she felt. Larry Ray was unlike anyone Claudia had ever met before. But little did she know she was getting drawn into something prosecutors said was a cult.
She was under the belief that she was indebted to this man.
In today's episode, I'm going to take you through the Lawrence Larry Ray trial, specifically zeroing in on the testimony from Claudia Drury, who was the prosecution's main witness. Over the course of several days, Claudia took the stand in front of her alleged abuser and testified against him during his federal court trial that recently concluded.
This is someone who had a very clear memory of what she went through and seemed to describe it in a tremendous amount of harrowing detail.
Claudia's testimony tells the story of how a vulnerable college student was manipulated and controlled by Larry, a middle-aged man who prosecutors accused of creating a sex cult of college students. Prosecutors said Claudia and the other students worshipped him and looked up to him for guidance and stability. They believed Larry was like a therapist, helping them become healthy, normal people. The students were so wrapped up in Larry, they would do anything for him. They listened to whatever he said. And in return, Larry exploited and manipulated them, according to prosecutors. Here's what Jeffrey Berman, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said at a 2020 press conference after Larry was arrested and accused of extorting 5 of his victims.
As alleged in the indictment, at the core of Ray's criminal conduct was his ability to psychologically control his young victims, most of whom were in college when the scheme began. Ray initially befriended his victims, moving into their on-campus housing before encouraging them the summer after their sophomore year to move in with him to a Manhattan apartment, which many of them did. Under the pretense of counseling the victims, Ray inquired about intimate aspects of their lives and mental health, managing to convince several of them that they were broken and that only Ray could fix them. Ray also sought to alienate these college students from their parents, fueling their dependence on him.
This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 200. Larry Ray went to trial in March 2022. He was accused of multiple crimes in a 17-count indictment, including extortion, sex trafficking, and racketeering conspiracy. He was facing a maximum of life in prison. Claudia Drury was one of the prosecution's star witnesses. Her testimony began in a potentially rather surprising place for a criminal mastermind to lure in his victims: the idyllic, pristine campus of a prestigious liberal arts college. At Sarah Lawrence College, Claudia lived on campus in a dorm with several roommates, including one named Talia. Claudia met Talia's father, Lawrence Ray, whom everyone called Larry, in the fall of 2010. Claudia was 19 back then. When she took the stand to testify in March 2022, she was 31 years old. When Larry first showed up in her dorm, he had just gotten out of prison. Claudia testified that he was composed and remarkably well put together, magnetic and charismatic too. Talia assured Claudia that her father had been wrongfully imprisoned. Claudia told the court that she told her something about Larry exposing a secretive government takeover plot involving Homeland Security. After getting out of prison, he apparently needed somewhere to stay, so 50-year-old Larry crashed regularly at his daughter's house. He slept on the floor in her room. He befriended the other students. He took them out to dinner. They had conversations around the dinner table that were deep and philosophical. Claudia began to learn more about Larry's life, which seemed to play into the mystique about him. She said Larry was a former Marine and was well connected with friends in high places. While he was raising Talia, Larry was the kind of dad full of grand gestures and surprises. One time, he had rented out the FAO Schwartz toy store so Talia could go on a shopping spree. It sounded like something that only happened in the movies. Claudia noticed that Larry was becoming close to Isabella in particular, another one of the roommates there. She said he sometimes stayed over in Isabella's room. At first, he just said he was helping her through some psychological issues or emotional issues she was having, she said. Later, I learned more about it, that she had these deep-seated issues from being abused as a child, and he was helping her process them. She became suicidal, and he said he was helping her through that. Still, Claudia felt uncomfortable by their close relationship. She testified that she was pretty freaked out and found it weird that an older man was sleeping in the same room as a college-aged woman, almost 3 decades younger. Claudia even mentioned it to one of her professors during a meeting in early 2011. The philosophy professor confronted Isabella and also reported it to the dean. Claudia later backtracked her complaint. She testified how her apprehension about Larry and Isabella went away. She said Larry's presence seemed to calm Isabella, and that Isabella was becoming an almost whole new person. Before, Isabella was very, very reserved and very, very quiet, she testified. I don't know that I heard her talk like 5 times before meeting Larry. And when she met him, she started to open up more, talk to people more. He got her this coat that she really loved that was significantly more elegant than her other clothing. Claudia was spending more time with Larry too. Just like Isabella, she was having a hard time away at college and with being on her own for the first time. Claudia told the court that she grew up in California. She attended a private high school outside Los Angeles. Her parents bought her a horse. But fitting in at Sarah Lawrence was tough for her. She said she felt overwhelmed by her insecurities. She began experimenting with drugs and tried marijuana, ecstasy, and mushrooms. Claudia testified that at one point she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. It's a mental health condition that the Mayo Clinic says affects the way you feel about yourself and others. It includes self-image issues, difficulty managing emotions and behavior, and a pattern of unstable relationships, according to the Mayo Clinic. With borderline personality disorder, you have an intense fear of abandonment or instability, and you may have difficulty tolerating being alone. The roommates in the house encouraged Claudia to open up to Larry. Maybe Larry could help her too. Larry and Claudia went out to dinner, just the two of them. He seemed like he was listening to me, but also seemed very, very interested and wanted to help, Most people, when I would talk to them about my problems, they didn't really know what to do, and it was awkward or not helpful. But Larry really listened and really, really seemed as though he actually very much wanted to help me, she testified. She began turning to him more and more. And when Larry wasn't around, she picked up the phone and called him to get his advice. Claudia's parents were less than thrilled by the older man's growing presence in her sophomore year. They didn't like that he was sleeping at the dorm house. Larry was the cause of at least one family fight. During the summer after her sophomore year, Claudia's parents moved to New York City. But instead of staying with them, Claudia spent most of her time at Larry's apartment in the city. His place was only about 8 blocks from Claudia's parents' home. Other Sarah Lawrence students, men and women, crashed at Larry's apartment too. The sleeping arrangements in his one-bedroom apartment were certainly unorthodox. In the bed, Larry slept with his daughter Talia and Isabella. The others crashed on 2 king-size blow-up mattresses on the ground in the living room or on the couches. Claudia testified about the daily pace of life. There was no set routine. They stayed up late. They cooked. They talked as a group for 6 or 7 hours at a time. We talked a lot about different values, the primary one being honesty and what it means to be honest with yourself and what it means to be an honest person, she said. Also, will, choice, preferences. How do you know if someone is a good or a bad person? How do you know what a lie is? Things like that. The prosecutor asked, who was guiding these discussions? Larry, Claudia said. He was certainly instructing us and teaching us about things, but it was also just like a bonding experience. Claudia testified how the conversations pivoted to sex. Larry mentioned he had gone to swing clubs before. He bragged about his sexual trysts. And sometimes in those long marathon talks, Larry brought up philosophical ideals about sex. His message was the more honest you were with yourself, the more uninhibited and open you could be sexually. All of this was new to Claudia, who always felt uncomfortable in her body. Larry seemed to have control over the group. I was just sleeping on one of the king beds, and I think Dan was on the couch, and Iban was on the other king bed on the floor. And Larry came out of the bedroom, and it was just us in the living room, and stood over me, started grabbing himself, under his pants, and started talking about orgasms and how he could make me orgasm without touching me, Claudia testified. And then he went back into his bedroom. And then I believe he also suggested that before he left, that Dan and I have sex right there. And when he left, we did. And Iban was next to us. The mood in the apartment started to evolve from the long, deep talks to something that seemed like a tense police interrogation. Claudia testified that Larry hurled accusations at the students, at everyone except his daughter, Talia. Larry began accusing us of doing things wrong in the apartment, like scratching his pans or hiding his tools or stealing things, other things to hurt him, waste his time, hurt his ability to do critical things, throwing out papers he needed for court, things like that, Claudia said. And the discussions would become focused on one person, this long, drawn-out period of interrogation, basically with them at first denying and then eventually, after hours, that person confessing. Claudia testified that it became easy for her to think, well, maybe I did damage that. Once I sort of started confessing to those things, each one was like further proof of all the others. Larry's angry accusations were out of the blue, for no reason. None of the students had damaged his belongings or his apartment. Of course, they hadn't thrown out his papers or done anything wrong. Not to Larry, whom they admired and looked up to. The prosecutor asked, "Had you seen that side of the defendant during your sophomore year at Sarah Lawrence?" "No," Claudia said, "not like that." There was a reason for the madness, Claudia believed. Larry was doing it to help them, she testified. It was all part of their unorthodox therapy, psychological treatments to make us better, to make us more like developed people. And we were resisting it because we didn't want to let go of whatever was holding us back, like wanting to protect our parents or other psychological sort of motivation, Claudia testified. I genuinely believed that he was doing this for our benefit. I had experiences that I felt like I was getting better. I felt like this was helping me psychologically, and I became very dependent on Larry. I implicitly trusted that this was for good. He wasn't actually hurting anyone, and he was just taking more of an interest in us and going farther to fix our problems than anyone ever had in my life. Claudia said she found herself making false confessions when Larry accused her of something. She wrote her confessions down in her daily journal. It was very anxiety-producing and stressful because I would have to sit down and be like, let me dig deep and really come up with these memories of what I did. Because I thought that every time I didn't remember something or just didn't have a memory available, it was because I didn't want to own up to what I did, Claudia told the court. Larry was also turning the other students against each other. A lot of the time, Larry would ask questions. What do you think of this? What do you think of this person? And I, for one, would be like, I can't believe them. They're so terrible, Claudia said. One student named Iban was at a crossroads in Larry's homemade therapy. According to Claudia, Larry said he needed to make some sort of left or right decision psychologically. In order to push him towards the right decision, Larry took the edge of a spatula, but hid it in his hand so Iban didn't know what it was. He pressed it to his neck and told him it was a knife, and told him he was going to die, and he should just let go of whatever psychological thing he was holding on to, because he was going to die anyway, Claudia said. And according to Iban and Larry, Iban was able to make the leap, the psychological leap he needed. And afterwards, Larry was like, it was a spatula the whole time. Another time, Larry was furious at a student named Dan for supposedly not cleaning the oven properly. Larry got a knife and Dan was on the ground, like huddled or crouched down, and Larry was standing over him and telling him he was going to cut him up and kill him, and telling Isabella, go get the plastic sheeting, Claudia testified. There was a painting project in the apartment that had plastic sheeting. The implication was that it was for Dan's body. Larry seemed to always know what was right, what would make Claudia a better person, how to keep those lies from being stuck on her soul forever. A salesman named Sam was at Larry's apartment one day, selling special brand-named power tools, and Claudia had an easygoing, relaxed rapport with him in their brief interactions. After Sam left, Larry gave Claudia instructions to initiate sex with Sam. I think Larry called Sam so he would wait in the car or something. Wait before leaving because he was in his truck downstairs, Claudia testified. And I got in his truck, but I was very nervous. I was very uncomfortable, so I couldn't really bring myself to do anything. So I called Larry in the truck next to Sam in the cab. I was like, I'm nervous, or whatever I said. And Larry said, you should just take your hand and put it on his crotch. That's all you have to do. So while I was on the phone with Larry, I did, Claudia testified. The prosecutor asked, did you have a sexual encounter with Sam? Claudia testified that she did, and then kept seeing Sam afterward. What are some of the things the defendant would say to you about Sam? The prosecutor asked. Claudia went on. Sam was married, and I had never done anything remotely like that before. And I brought it up to Larry on one occasion, and he said something like, Sam's marriage is his own business. You're not breaking marriage vows. You're not doing anything. Sam is the custodian of his own marriage. Don't worry about it. It's okay. She said Larry made her believe this sexual relationship was going to make her a more full person, the healthiest version of herself. According to Claudia's testimony, she eventually left New York for a bit, a break from the violence and accusations now taking place in Larry's home. She had an opportunity many students would dream about, going to study abroad in England. But in Oxford, Claudia's mind constantly returned back to Larry, while she studied overseas from the fall of 2011 to the spring of 2012. Was she confessing everything that she should? Was she opening herself up and being truly honest? Was she going to lose Larry, Talia, Isabella, and all her friends who were back in the United States? Claudia wrote a note to Larry. She feared they were going to leave her. "I will be left here all alone," she wrote in an email in September 2011 that she read out loud on the stand. She Skyped Larry regularly. He told her to take off her shirt, and she did what he said. He sent her $400. It was for a bikini wax. Over the holidays, Claudia returned to the United States and was back at Larry's on her break. The same tense feelings were still at his apartment, and it felt like it was getting worse. It just felt more tenuous than it had in the past, she testified. Larry continued to accuse Claudia of destroying the apartment, and Claudia again admitted to things she said she didn't do. "I want to be good. I'm scared," she wrote in her journal. The prosecutor asked what she meant by her words. "Because no matter what I did or how hard I tried, I would inevitably be confronted for something I had done wrong with the intention of hurting other people. And I believed at the time that's what I was doing," Claudia testified. "And so it was like waking up every morning like, okay, I'm going to be good today. And then having that shot down and having to pick myself back up. I felt like this because Larry had said this. There was only a small window of time where you can actually be honest about the things you've done wrong. And after that window of time, even if you're honest, you won't be able to make amends. You won't be able to repair. It's just going to be like a lie that sits on your soul forever." After her winter break was over, Claudia left New York and Larry's apartment and went back to Europe to finish her year-long study abroad. Whenever she felt anxious, she called him. "You aren't being honest with me," he would tell her. Claudia comprised long lists of everything she had done wrong, things that were vague because she wasn't exactly sure if she actually did them. When study abroad was over, she returned back to Larry's apartment. She didn't return to Sarah Lawrence College that fall. Instead, she checked herself into a psychiatric hospital, a place Larry encouraged her to go after he convinced her that she wanted to hurt other people, even her own parents. After her hospitalization, Claudia got a job with a dog walking service and started going to therapy with her family. She wrote down everything she said, and her parents said, and what the therapist said, and emailed it to Larry. Claudia testified that she didn't trust her parents. She thought they wanted to hurt her. She knew they loathed Larry. In November 2012, Claudia, with Larry's help, drafted a letter to ask the dean to readmit her back to school. Larry said the letter was going to be helpful to me to get me readmitted, and that the best way to be readmitted would be to tell the truth, she told the court. And he specifically emphasized his role that he played, and how he helped me so much and essentially sort of like he was the hero of this entire story. In front of the jury, Claudia read the finished product out loud, the essay that was supposed to help her get her place at school back. She read, "Sarah Lawrence is the place this journey began for me when I met Larry for the first time 2 years ago. His friendship changed my life. It changed my parents' life. He has helped me through so much pain and confusion." The essay worked. Claudia was allowed back in. This time, she was living at home while she took her classes. She still saw Larry, although not as often as before. There were still troubling incidents happening at Larry's apartment, she testified, describing one in particular in 2012. One of the male students in Larry's circle was having doubts about his sexuality and was trying to figure out who he was. Claudia said he eyed a dress that Isabella folded when she did her laundry. "Do you want to wear that dress?" Larry asked him. Larry was pushing the man to help him clarify his sexuality. That was how Larry framed it. But Claudia was horrified by what happened next as things escalated. The man put on the dress, and Larry ordered Isabella to get her duffel bag containing sex toys. Photographs were taken. Claudia saw them later and never forgot the expression on the man's face as Larry forced a sex toy into his mouth. His face is contorted, Claudia testified. I think he's actually staring right at the camera. He looks panicked and scared. It's not a look I've actually seen on anyone's face. Talia and Isabella and the rest of the group seemed amused, Claudia remembered. Another time, Larry crafted a noose out of tinfoil and put it around the same man's testicles and asked him questions, like a lie detector test. Larry would then pull the foil tighter when he wasn't satisfied with the man's answers. In the summer of 2013, 22-year-old Claudia Drury took the train to Pinehurst, North Carolina. She had agreed to help Larry with some yard work at his stepfather's home, along with some others in Larry's group, including Isabella. But when she got there, Claudia wasn't prepared for the hard labor. They dug ditches, laid sod, moved rocks, and installed pipes. Claudia testified that Larry watched what they ate and limited their carb intake. He usually wouldn't let them into the house unless to use the bathroom. They worked during thunderstorms. I went down there to help Larry do yard work, and shortly after I got there, it became it's hard to describe, she said. We were doing work like all day, every day. We weren't eating a lot. The people who were down there, myself, Isabella, and Felicia, were on like a daily basis having mental breakdowns, essentially what I would describe as mental breakdowns. I had never done any yard work before, and we were doing very difficult, demanding, physical, like labor tasks that I had no idea how to do. And constantly, Larry would tell us we did them wrong, and we're trying to sabotage them, and we had to redo them. And so we'd spend sometimes till like 3 or 4 a.m. redoing, like laying sod. Larry kept accusing Claudia of sabotaging the yard work. They got into arguments and would yell at each other. Larry pushed Claudia and she fell, the wind knocked out of her. In those 6 weeks of chaos and hard labor and hunger, Claudia testified that she lost 40 pounds. The prosecutor asked her why she agreed to go down to North Carolina in the first place to do yard work. Claudia answered, as I've said before, I was very dependent on Larry. The relationship meant pretty much the world to me at that point. So for him offering for me to come on a trip and help them was appealing to me. One day, she said, Larry told her, it's time to go home. A week after Claudia was back in New York, Larry's daughter Talia called her, angry over all the things Claudia supposedly damaged at the North Carolina property. Talia was furious and accused Claudia of breaking a sprinkler system and of being responsible for other expensive damage. And just as Talia requested, Claudia wrote a list of the so-called things she was responsible for breaking. Larry and Talia made it seem like Claudia owed them $100,000. Claudia was broke. She couldn't pay them. Her family wouldn't lend her any money either. Claudia's debts to Larry hung over her head. She was back at Sarah Lawrence and finished her final year of college. She graduated and then got a job at a bakery. She was living at home at that point, and Talia moved in with her family too. As Claudia continued to spend time with Larry and Talia, the father-daughter team complained about something new, how sick they felt. Larry had been talking about how sick he felt, telling us various ways in which he felt sick, Claudia testified. Talia had been talking about how she felt sick, how she was going to go study at this library for the LSAT and had to come back home or almost passed out because she felt so sick. Claudia felt like she was the one being blamed. They were so sick, she believed Talia and Larry must have been poisoned. Talia had been living with my mother, so I thought that all signs pointed to that my mother and I were involved in poisoning her, since we were the people that had access to her during this time, Claudia testified. How could this happen? Larry and Talia demanded. In the group of college students following Larry's lead, Claudia had earned a reputation as the destructor, the person always causing damage, the saboteur. I felt very ostracized and on thin ice, she testified. Claudia made a false confession. Yes, she and her mother had poisoned Talia and Larry. Larry wasn't angry. He matter-of-factly told her that she could go to prison for a long time. Claudia wrote her confession down on paper. It was very surreal, she testified. I wasn't really thinking about what I was confessing to. I think I was pretty numb. The gravity of what I was saying, the fact that I was actually confessing to poisoning people with the intention to murder them. Adam Klasfeld is the managing editor of lawandcrime.com. He's been a legal journalist for more than a decade, covering pretty much everything in the courts, federal courts, state courts, even military courts. He covered this case.
The prosecution put the position that essentially Ray was trying to extort his victims, and the most potent tool of this extortion, which he would use to get them to pay him and feel indebted to him to the tune of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, is by getting them to confess either in an audio tape or a videotape or even written confessions, emails, that they had harmed him, that they had damaged him. Once he got them to quote unquote admit that they had poisoned him or his family members, that they had colluded with his enemies and damaged his properties, he would start essentially a tab of an ever-growing debt to hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars that he would collect on. That is why prosecutors charged him with extortion, forced labor, racketeering, and in the case of Claudia Drury, sex trafficking.
Larry recorded a video where Claudia confessed. I'm making a video statement to say that I never stopped poisoning Lawrence Ray and Talia Ray, Claudia says in the beginning as Larry interviews her.
And first, are you making this by your own free will?
Yes.
Anybody pay you?
No.
Anybody threaten you?
No.
Anybody coerce you?
No.
Okay. And you said you want to make this because of what?
Because I just want to make it. I just want to talk about it and tell the truth.
Why?
Because it's destroying me not to.
Okay. So is that what you said before? What you said a few minutes before we started recording this, that you feel bad? Is that true or not?
It's true.
The video is troubling to watch. Claudia doesn't make direct eye contact with Larry, who holds the camera. She tries to cover her head. She looks miserable, like she's dazed. Adam Klasfeld described it as a hostage video.
Well, if you look at these videos, it really does look like a hostage video. Claudia Drury has really blank face as she's being asked at the beginning of the footage, are you making these comments out of your own free will? And she says listlessly, yes. Everything is listless. And it goes through the motions of Larry Ray prompting her to say, oh, this is just something that my conscience is killing me for everything that I have done, and I am, from my own free will, going forward and confessing all of the terrible things that I've done. But anyone listening to the tape, anyone watching the video, can see this is someone who's being prompted by a powerful individual who has control over her to, quote unquote, confess to the crimes of poisoning and whatever else Larry Ray wanted to lay at her feet.
Claudia said Larry constantly told her that she was going to go to prison for poisoning him. He described all the terrible things that were going to happen to her there. She felt trapped. Her relationship with her parents was on the rocks. She was convinced that they were hanging her out to dry, to take the fall for Talia's poisoning. Her own self-hate was rising. She believed her life was over since she was going to go to prison. I felt like my life was completely falling apart, she testified. In April 2014, she attempted suicide. She was hospitalized for 2 weeks, though Larry was still in her ear. When she left treatment, she enrolled in a program at Columbia University and began hostessing at a sex club, just like Larry instructed her to. Larry seemed proud of her for her new, edgy, provocative career. She testified that she felt better when he praised her. She had been craving his support. It made me feel like there was hope for me to get things back on track from this place I was in, which was I had poisoned everybody he cared about and loved, Claudia testified. The prosecutor asked, around this time, was the defendant making other suggestions related to your sexual activity? Claudia said yes. The prosecutor asked for some examples. He told me to take a cab ride, and at the end of the cab ride, instead of paying, suggested that I have sex with the driver instead, Claudia said. He also told me to pick up someone on the street and have sex with them in Central Park. She admitted she did what Larry told her. The more sex Claudia was having, the more abuse she endured at the sex club, and the happier Larry was with her. The prosecution made it clear Claudia was being groomed for sex trafficking.
It starts with the extortion. Extort these false confessions, which you lord over the heads of your victims to collect the debt. And with Claudia Drury, it manifested in sex trafficking.
As the defense put it later in the trial, Larry recorded everything. The good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. In one recorded video, Larry interviewed Claudia on Facebook Live.
Tell the world why you want to just feel sorry and sad for yourself.
I don't want to.
Go ahead. And how you just destroy things and damage everybody.
I don't want to.
Now look at you crying.
Why are you crying, Claudia?
Why are you crying, Claudia?
I don't want to.
Well, you are. Why are you crying? Look. Look, there's Claudia. Say hello to all your Facebook friends.
I don't want to.
Don't want to what?
I don't want to damage things.
Everybody out there in Facebook land, do you know Claudia as a truthful person or a liar? Well, Claudia, what do you think? Look at you, how you feel sorry for yourself. Look, you did something wrong. You know what's shocking, astounding, and disgusting? You do something wrong to someone else. You victimize somebody, and then you sit there and cry for yourself.
I didn't want to.
But do you realize what you're doing? She's not even hearing this. Do you believe this? Is?
No, I don't.
Look at her hiding like a coward.
He didn't want to.
These recorded videos were later admitted into evidence at Larry's trial.
When federal authorities arrested Ray and they searched his home, they found that some of these audio tapes and videotaped confessions that he would force his victims to do would turn out to be some of the most powerful evidence against him. They found thousands of files, often these compulsive recordings of his victims admitting to outlandish conduct. And we can get into the details of what that meant in the case of Claudia, where it was one of the most horrifying of the cases.
In the winter of 2014, Larry encouraged Claudia, the college student who had once been shy and uncomfortable about her body, to become a sex worker. Sex was just a game, like tennis, a competition, he told her. Sex work would give her a rush. It was fun, he said. And Claudia felt in debt to him for those thousands of dollars of damage she caused in North Carolina and to his New York apartment. She wanted to fix everything. She wanted to pay her debts. I felt immense pressure from Larry to get money for him, she testified. And Claudia was going to make a lot of money, too. She testified that she gave Larry $2.5 million from being sex trafficked 7 days a week for years. I never took days off, she testified. I worked on every holiday and my birthday. A good week, she made as much as $50,000. A slow week was $10,000. Larry took most of the money she made as she worked through an escort service, then went independent using a website to find clients. In her contacts, Larry was listed under the name Marcus Aurelius, like the great Roman emperor and philosopher. Larry, who had once led marathon discussions over philosophy, apparently thought of himself as a modern-day Marcus Aurelius. Larry used the Willy Wonka Oompa Loompa song as his ringtone for when Claudia called him. He was always mocking her about her weight. If she were thinner, she could charge higher prices, he told her. Claudia testified she developed a terrible eating disorder. On the stand, in a courtroom filled with attorneys, a judge, and members of the media, Claudia told the court about the embarrassing and horrific details of what she experienced. She was often abused by her clients. She feared once that she got hepatitis C, but fortunately it was a false alarm. People she had sex with degraded her and were rough with her. 3 times she was arrested for prostitution, but she never told the police she was being forced to do it. If she didn't make enough money, Larry would threaten to blackmail her clients. She testified, "He would threaten me physically. He would threaten to put me in prison because I wasn't even trying to make repairs for this horrible crime. A lot of the time, on several occasions, he would tell me, he literally said, 'We are dying, Claudia,' referring to the people I had poisoned." Claudia testified that in her head, she always felt she needed to make the repairs. She needed to fight for Larry. She needed to stand up for the truth. Larry's threats grew more intense. "He was mad. I don't remember why. I was sitting on a chair, and he was standing over me and angrily talking to me," she said. "And he raised his hand and I flinched. And he got very angry that I had flinched and was mad that it seemed like I was trying to manipulate the situation, to imply that I was physically scared of him and that I was acting. And then he said, 'Do you want me to teach you how not to flinch? It'll help you. It will be helpful to you, really.' And I said yes. Even though I was scared, I didn't feel like I had any sort of choice to say no and have him not do whatever he was going to do anyway. And he began to hit me over and over until I stopped flinching. And he did stop hitting me when I stopped flinching." Once, she said Larry threatened to have her abducted and abandoned in the Middle East. "Do you know what they do to women in the Middle East?" he asked her. He warned her there were deadlines for her to truly prove she was a good person and to bring in enough money. The prosecutor asked, "Were you able to meet the defendant's demands for money just by prostituting?" "No," she responded. She was asked what else she did to get money. "I started to have to ask my clients to give me money, either like forward me money on the basis of a retainer so they wouldn't have to pay me for future visits, or just help me because I would come up with various excuses for why I needed help financially," she said. There was another moment in her testimony when the prosecutor asked if anything in Claudia's life brought her joy. She said she enjoyed running, but that she was so tired she eventually stopped that. Some of her clients were the only positive interactions in her life. "I felt like I could actually give people something or make them happy, and not just be someone who ruined everything she touched," she said. But Larry was about to use her clients against her too. To keep herself safe the best she could, Claudia said she asked her clients to email her from their professional accounts so she could verify their identities before their sexual encounters. Larry told her to send all of those email addresses in a list to him. He wanted collateral to blackmail her clients. He said he wanted to post their identities online or call the clients' wives. He created a website and threatened to post her client list. Claudia said she felt very, very scared and anxious, almost more than anything else. I didn't want to get other people involved in this. I felt responsible, she said. The prosecutor asked if she cared about her clients, and she said yes. Stewart was one client she was developing feelings for by the end of 2018. She said she met the married businessman in hotels in New York, Philadelphia, and Greenwich, Connecticut. She testified that she warned Stewart that Larry put his personal information on a website. And then Claudia revealed to Larry that she had alerted Stewart. Larry was so angry, Claudia testified, that he savagely attacked her in a hotel room over 7 hours one night in October 2018. Trying to hurt my family? He asked her. He tied her up, naked, to a chair. He threatened to waterboard her. He put a plastic bag on her head for several long seconds. He choked her and smothered her with a pillow. He choked her with a leash and collar until she passed out. He cut her hair to further degrade her. Do you think I'm going to kill you? He asked. I'm not going to kill you. Then he put the plastic bag on her head. I'm going to kill you, he said. Isabella was in the room too. Claudia remembered that Larry and Isabella took a break at one point and ordered burgers and fries from the Starlight Diner. When they finally left the hotel room, the torture over, Claudia cleaned up the mess and went to bed. She testified that she woke up the next morning and saw a client. Why did you go back to work? The prosecutor asked. Because Larry told me to, Claudia testified. I was scared. When asked why she didn't leave, she said she had no place else to go. At Larry's trial, the jury heard audio recorded from that night.
One of the most powerful pieces of audio evidence, the night that prosecutors call her long night of torture. The fact that that night was actually audio taped and you can hear Larry Ray in it. There was something surprising about that particular audio recording because it is so muted for a long night of torture where she is telling a jury that Larry Ray is suffocating her with a bag. You can hear the rustlings of the bag in the background. She's telling the jury that Larry Ray had threatened to waterboard her and indeed poured water over her head next to a radiator. She's not screaming in it, but once you know the context, it's absolutely chilling, and it was almost certainly chilling for a jury to hear Larry Ray mumble, apparently to Isabella Pollock, who prosecutors claim to be Larry Ray's lieutenant and co-conspirator, pass me the bag. That Larry Ray can be heard mumbling and muttering the phrase, pass me the bag, just as that recording ends. So like I said, it's not for a recording that prosecutors call a record of torture. You don't hear screaming. You hear the back and forth of what sounds like the usual confession tapes. But once you know the context, the rustling of the bag is chilling. The comment, pass me the bag, is chilling.
For most of Claudia's testimony on the stand, she hid her emotions and spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. It seemed like maybe she had distanced herself from that time in her life, from being under Larry's control. But when the prosecution played that recording from the night Claudia said she was beaten in the hotel, Adam noticed Claudia's demeanor change.
One point of emotion that did stand out in my mind was listening to the audio recording of what prosecutors called the long night of torture. That was the most emotional I remember seeing her, only in that she appeared to look down at the floor when that part was being played and look up. She just moved the head movements. There was this sort of tension that wasn't apparent elsewhere in her testimony. And it was very striking to me because, like I said, this isn't a record of her screaming. It's not a record of the typical sounds that one would associate with torture. But once you know the context, and that context was clearly bothering her at that point.
Larry's attack in the hotel room was in October 2018. 6 months later, Stuart contacted Claudia out of the blue and offered to help her leave. She took a train to Philadelphia and turned off her phone. Stuart gave her money to help her with her living expenses, food, and psychiatric care to process what had happened to her. "Since you got on that train, have you spoken to the defendant?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Claudia responded. Larry had tried, with no success, to contact her. He sent her an email. Claudia read it out loud on the stand. Larry wrote, "In my experience, the truth, capital T, has always been important to you, and proper regard for the truth has always helped you. You asked me to promise to never abandon you, and I have not. You said you would never run and hide, and I have no understanding as to why you are doing so now. I am asking you to call me, Lawrence." Claudia didn't call. Larry's abuse was going to get national attention. In April 2019, New York Magazine published a story called "The Stolen Kids of Sarah Lawrence." Claudia testified she had nothing to do with the magazine story, but Isabella wrote her an angry, accusatory email anyway. Claudia read Isabella's email on the stand. It said, "You poisoned me, and your history of hurting innocent people is finally coming back to you. Your actions are not evil, they are vile. You are vile. You poisoned 5 innocent people, but claim you are the victim. That it was you who experienced violence at the hands of any one of the people that you victimized. The sheer length and overindulgence and languid hyperbole, which read like one of your conference papers, made it clear that you were the perpetrator of the New York Magazine article. You will be the same in prison as you are now, a fat, lonely nobody who lives to serve the needs of others. You're not evil, Claudia. You are a criminal." Claudia said she saw the email as a threat. The viral story prompted authorities to investigate Larry. By then, Stuart had already paid for an attorney, and Claudia was working with the government. She testified that she was truthful about everything about her past and her sex trafficking, except she lied about her relationship with Stuart. She told the prosecutors that she worked part-time for him at his company. "I didn't want to hurt him anymore," she testified. "I felt extremely responsible for everything he had to go through." Claudia testified about her life story, what happened at Sarah Lawrence College when she was 19, and the years of abuse she suffered throughout her 20s, during several days on the stand as the prosecution's witness. The prosecution's case against Lawrence Ray hinged on Claudia's testimony. Now it was Larry's defense attorney's turn to cross-examine her. His attorney, Marnie Lennox, asked, "You testified on direct that growing up, you used to tell stories to your friends, right?" Claudia said yes. "You would embellish your stories?" "Yes." "To make them more entertaining, you said?" "Yes." "And for attention?" "Yes." "In general, when you were younger, you would act out for attention?" she asked. "I'm not sure what you mean by act out," Claudia responded. "You would run away?" "Yes." "You would purposely fall on your head?" "That's actually something I told Larry," Claudia responded, "but it was reinterpreted over the course of a long conversation with him, and I think I actually may have just fallen on my head." Lennox asked if she once intentionally ate a capsule of ammonia. Claudia said she did, but that it was accidental. "In high school, you continued embellishing your stories, right?" Lennox asked. Claudia said yes. "You had a problem with telling stories as if they were real." Claudia said, "I mean, I did do that." Lennox then asked, "And you would make up stories about little things that didn't even really matter, right?" She brought up Claudia's confessions, asking if she wrote some of them to get Larry's attention. "No, I wouldn't say that," Claudia testified. Some of the confessions she wrote alone, without Larry's direct input, she acknowledged. But Larry's influence hung over her, since she wrote her confessions down right after talking with him, the conversation fresh in her mind. When looking back at her time in North Carolina working as a landscaper for Larry, Claudia admitted she went there willingly on her own. She knew how to take care of herself, she agreed under questioning. She knew how to Google for a cab. She conceded that although she had a privileged upbringing, by late 2014, she had deep financial struggles. She had no money to pay rent and was about to get evicted. She couldn't afford the certification courses she was taking at Columbia University after she earned her bachelor's degree at Sarah Lawrence. She had no job, no hope. You needed money, right? Lennox asked. Claudia said yes. You testified that you were not a sexual person before you met Larry, right? Lennox then asked. Claudia agreed. But she admitted she had been exposed to sex at Sarah Lawrence. The campus had an event called Sleaze Week that focused on body and sex positivity. There was even a 24-hour pornography marathon during the festivities, although Claudia said she wasn't aware of that. Lennox asked Claudia about sexual things she had done in her past and questioned her about her journal entries. Claudia sometimes wrote about sex in a positive way. It's very hard for me to go back and read that in front of a room full of people and reporters, Claudia said. The judge pushed the defense to move on. You spoke to the government about Larry suggesting you start escorting, Lennox said. And during those conversations, you told them that Larry suggested escorting as a way to earn money for yourself as an income? Claudia responded, I don't remember saying that. I very well could have. I don't remember saying it. Lennox also turned to Claudia's escorting business, pointing out how much control she had. She was the one who wrote and posted her own ads to meet clients online. She created her own aliases and set her own prices. She seemed to be acting as a thoughtful entrepreneur. Claudia wrote memos brainstorming about hygiene best practices and what to do if a client cancels or wants to spend the entire night. Lennox pointed out that Claudia seemed like her own boss, the one in charge. Ms. Drury, you believed at the time that you were doing sex work that a man who engages a woman for sex work is no less of a human, right? Lennox asked her. That's correct, Claudia testified. And you found sex work to be life-affirming in many ways, right? Lennox asked. Claudia answered, at the time. And at the time you indicated that you loved what you were doing, right? Lennox asked. Claudia testified, I did indicate that. The defense also tried to poke holes in Claudia's testimony about the night she testified that Larry beat and tortured her at the hotel. Under questioning, Claudia admitted there was a phone in the hotel room, but she didn't call the front desk or 911 after what happened. And she didn't open up with her clients either when she saw them hours later. What also didn't add up, the defense argued, was that Claudia had been arrested 3 times. 3 times she was safely in the custody of police, separated from Larry, and 3 times she never told them that she was being sex trafficked. The defense later said to the jury, if Claudia was truly being forced into sex work, that was her moment to get out. Larry wasn't there when she was arrested. He would have no way of knowing that she had communicated with the police. That was her safe time. She denied it. After spending days on the stand, Claudia was almost done answering questions. Under redirect, the prosecutor asked her, what effect has your time with the defendant had on you, Ms. Drury? Claudia didn't hold back. It has severely damaged my life and my ability to think, my ability to interact with people, my ability to believe in the good in the world, she said. I am in debt that I have no way to pay back. My credit score is very low. I can't really hold down a job, a normal job. I have to live with and try to reconcile with having been a prostitute for many years and all of the experiences I had, not to mention all the publicity. Claudia's testimony went on for 5 days, and during that week, there were 2 dramatic moments in court. Twice, Larry was rushed out of the courtroom, having had an alleged medical episode. Was he faking, or was he truly ill? little is known about what actually happened.
That is currently being litigated as to how much of it will go into the public sphere. After the trial ended, the judge had essentially asked the parties to to give their dueling arguments as to how much can go onto the public record, how much of it needs to be protected due to Larry Ray's privacy. So I think we'll find out soon enough as to how severe these medical episodes were, or whether there was something else going on. But right now, because of all of the secrecy surrounding it in court, there's a lot of mystery as to what happened, other than what reporters like me saw, which was Larry Ray being rushed out in a gurney with an oxygen mask in his face and being put into an ambulance.
Other witnesses testified at Larry's trial. Many stories were similar to Claudia's.
One of the victims, who Larry Ray described as his wife, was a Harvard graduate and a Columbia Medical School graduate who left a burgeoning career in the field of medicine, left her residency in California to essentially be one of Larry Ray's followers.
That woman told the jury that she met Larry through her brother, who also lived at Larry's apartment with the other Sarah Lawrence students. She got into a romantic relationship with him, and it quickly turned abusive. She said he binded her with zip ties, duct taped her mouth shut, and would beat her. At one point, he made her wear a diaper and suck on a pacifier. He also urged her to have sex with strangers and record her encounters. He would then use the recordings as collateral against her. She testified that he had convinced her that she owed him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he threatened to have her thrown in jail. Larry chose not to testify. In their closing arguments, defense attorney Marnie Lennox argued that Claudia and the other Sarah Lawrence students were all adults when they first met Larry. They were not vulnerable young people. They were well-educated adults with supportive parents who graduated from elite private high schools before moving away to begin college, she said. They weren't children. They were high-achieving, educated, intelligent adults. Larry didn't force anyone to have sex, she said. He encouraged consenting adults to explore their sexual identities and sexuality. It may seem strange, it may appear perverse, it may be vulgar, but it's not grooming and it's not criminal, she said. She pointed to all the recordings and videos Larry made. Why would he do that if he was committing a crime? That didn't make sense. Claudia Drury, she told the jury, was a notorious storyteller all her life. She said Claudia had no job, nor source of income, and she couldn't afford the apartment where she lived. She was an adult living in New York City, she said. She needed money, and she needed money fast. Larry suggested escorting, and it made sense. Claudia enjoyed sex. She said there's nothing wrong with that it's perfectly healthy and natural. The government wants you to believe that Claudia's entry into sex work was the result of Larry's grooming, but there's no independent evidence to corroborate Claudia's claims that Larry groomed her. Assistant U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon described in her closing arguments the demeanors of Claudia and the other witnesses who testified against Larry. They were gentle, soft-spoken. You heard them talk about their insecurities at the start of college. The defendant decided that they were perfect targets, she said. He moved into his daughter's college dorm when these young people were at their most vulnerable, at a time when they had moved away from their parents and were trying to figure out what kind of adult to be. He saw the self-doubt that came with being a teenager. He capitalized on their depression and the loneliness that comes from being away from home for the first time. But she said Larry had also underestimated Claudia and the others. He never thought they would ever testify against him. He never thought they would have the courage to take the stand and relive the darkest moments of their lives, to face the abuser they had been taught to revere and trained to fear, she said. But they had. The jury began deliberating. On April 6, 2022, they found Lawrence Larry Ray guilty on all counts, stemming from racketeering, extortion, sex trafficking, forced labor, tax evasion, and money laundering offenses. The now 62-year-old is scheduled to be sentenced in September and could face the possibility of life in prison. Here's what U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said after the verdict.
Let me be very clear. Larry Ray is a predator, an evil man who did evil things. Today's verdict finally brings him to justice. This verdict would not have been possible without the victims who testified in court. We are in awe of their bravery in the face of incredible trauma. I also want to thank the career prosecutors in my office, the Southern District of New York, and our law enforcement partners who stood with those victims and worked tirelessly to ensure that justice was done.
Larry's daughter, Talia, has been named an unindicted co-conspirator in court documents, but she remains uncharged, and it's not clear if that will ever change. Isabella Pollack, another named co-conspirator and alleged lieutenant, whom Claudia says also tortured her that night in the hotel room, has pleaded not guilty to her charges. In court documents, prosecutors wrote, in contrast with the other college roommates who became the defendant's victims, Pollack became his trusted lieutenant within the enterprise, acting as his lead agent in carrying out extortion, sex trafficking, and money laundering for the benefit of the enterprise. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram at CourtJunkie, by tweeting me at CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. This episode was researched and written by Gabrielle Russon. Thank you to Adam Klasfeld from Law and Crime for talking to us about this case, and in particular about Claudia Drury's testimony. You can follow him on Twitter at KlasfeldReports. And to hear these episodes without the ads and hear additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, check out my Patreon options by going to CourtJunkie.com/support. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.